Welcome back to the Science of CBD. I'm Gene Bruno, Professor of Nutraceutical Science at Huntington University of Health Sciences, formulator of Twin Lab products, and your host. In today's podcast, we're going to discuss quality assurance, which is the importance of proper manufacturing and testing procedures for CBD products. Now, the easiest way to do that, I think, is to take you on a sort of a virtual tour of how Twin Lab CBD products are made. So, here's where it starts. It starts with the raw material. In this case, let's go back to the field. The hemp is grown organically in Europe from non-GMO seeds. There's an 80-year history of doing it, so they really know how to do it right. It's responsibly harvested. Then it's CO2 critical extracted. Now, CO2 critical extraction of any kind of an herbal material, including hemp, is often considered to be sort of the best possible one because the extraction takes place via a temperature and pressure process. So it's a very clean process. You don't have any residual materials in there that were used in the extraction. And out of that you get a hemp oil. That hemp oil is then nitrogen packed, which gives it good stability. In fact, I've seen documentation showing without doing anything, this stuff is almost perfectly stable without any change in its natural cannabinoid content for 2 years. So that's awesome. Now, you can take that oil, and that oil can be microencapsulated in a process that produces a powder. And that's what happens with the material used for the Twin Lab products because they're put into a capsule. Now, the next step is you want to make sure that there's documentation from the supplier of the raw material. So that documentation has to show that it was tested for its CBD content. It has to show that it was tested for its THC content. THC is, of course, the psychoactive compound that you find in pot, and you find very, very tiny amounts of it in hemp. But nevertheless, by the law, it has to be less than 0.3%. The material that is used for Twin Lab products is actually less than 0.2% THC, so that's good. It's also tested for its heavy metal content, for pesticide content, and for any bacteria. So it's thoroughly tested, and we get those documents from the supplier. Now, next it goes to the manufacturer. And so the first thing is the manufacturer is going to adhere to GMPs, good manufacturing processes established in the regulations. So we always thoroughly audit our manufacturer and make sure that they are doing things the way they're supposed to be done. Now, when the manufacturer gets that raw material, gets this hemp material, it's placed into quarantine because even though there's documents from the supplier, nobody's going to take the supplier's word for it. They're going to duplicate that testing at the manufacturer to verify all the supplier specifications and show everything's what it's supposed to be. And the labs at the manufacturers or even third-party labs will use state-of-the-art equipment such as HPLC, high-pressure liquid chromatography, and other types of sophisticated equipment, and of course, microbiological labs to test for the bacteria. So all of that's done. Once it's passed everything, then it's released from quarantine and is ready for use in manufacturing. Finally, we get around to manufacturing. The first thing that's done is a pilot batch is produced instead of a full production batch. Now, you produce a pilot batch because you want to make sure that everything works out fine. You don't want to have troubles in your encapsulation process or anything else when you're in the middle of a production run. So you start out with a pilot batch. If everything works out there, then it moves into a full production run. Now, before the product is encapsulated, all the equipment is thoroughly cleaned and serviced before each manufacturing session. The ingredients, whatever is going to be combined together, the different nutraceuticals or excipients, are mixed in large commercial mixers. And during that process, there'll be what's called a uniformity of mix test. And that means they'll take after they mix it for a certain amount of time, they'll take a sample of the mix, they'll bring it to the lab, they'll test it and say, oh, look, the amounts of each ingredient are at the right levels. Once that is established, then when you start filling the capsules, as long as the mix is uniform, everything will be in there at the amount it's supposed to be. So that takes place, and the powder is filled using the encapsulation equipment. Then spot testing of the tablet weight, or of the capsule weight in this case, takes place every 15 to 20 minutes. You want to do that because even if you know the mix is uniform, you still want to make sure that the right amount has been filled in each capsule. So spot testing of the capsule weight will take place and verified and documented so it's known that every capsule has the right amount of the right stuff moving forward. But even when it's done, the final capsule is again tested, and it's tested using third-party analytical labs to verify the test results. So we can see that everything that the supplier said, everything that we saw during the quarantine testing is again true in the testing of the final product. All right, but it's still not done. Then what happens is you have what's called accelerated stability testing. Accelerated stability is this environmental chamber where they adjust the humidity and the temperature, and 1 month in that chamber is equivalent to 6 months of real time. So if you leave it in there for a few months, you can see how the material is going to hold up over a period of time in the real world. And based on that information, you can now establish an expiration date with a high degree of certainty. Once all of this is done, product is finally bottled, labeled, and released to be distributed and sold. And when you think about all of the different steps that are involved in quality assurance and making sure that from field to finish you have something of very high quality, you are reminded of the Latin saying, and I've said it before, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Here's the deal, guys. If you're looking at established, credible companies like TwinLab, who's been around 50 years, and there's many other companies that have been around a long time, and they're very credible, you have to say, well, do you want to just buy your CBD or any dietary supplement from just any company? You have to be particularly concerned when it comes to CBD products. This is something that came up recently in an FDA meeting that took place with industry and with the public, and there was a lot of concern expressed about what we might refer to as sort of pop-up brands that never existed before, but hey, they want to take advantage of the CBD rush and how everybody's buying CBD and how you can make a lot of money in CBD if you just come out with some products really quick. But they're not necessarily following all the GMPs, they're not necessarily following quality assurance standards, and you just don't know what you're getting. So that's really important. Buy from whoever you buy from, make sure it's established and a credible company. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the Science of CBD. If you liked what you learned, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And for more information about CBD or to sign up for our newsletter, visit twinlabcbd.com. Thanks again.